Claudia says most stores are already starting to rely on distribution lines through Chinatown. People have started to say the profit is more important than mutual support for their countrymen. What shall we do? The consciousness of the people is starting to stray from this ideal. This is why nationalism is really fucking dumb, by the way. But it's also why these people are really dumb too. If we are to guide our countrymen, we must return them to the proper path. How? There's no reason for them to be angry at someone that literally liberated them. It's mind-numbingly stupid. By using the technique Cyrus and the others specialized in, we are members of the criminal underworld after all. I won't do. Ideals can't come true unless they're approved of and voluntary. No matter how noble a goal may be, if the path leading them is paved with coercion and violence, then we'll just be repeating Caleb's mistake. We're members of the criminal underworld. While we may engage in bloodbaths with other people in the underworld, we must never shed the blood of those who live in the world of daylight. Then let's kill some fucking GDS members. So you're saying there's nothing we can do? They're underground? Fuck them. We can only appeal to everyone's Japanese souls. Yeah, that's basically jerking off in the wind and expecting the earth not to spin. Do you think people will listen? We won't know until we try. I have faith in the Japanese people. If that doesn't work, we'll probably make the same decisions again and again, with all our traditions and culture, not just soy sauce. So is there any way I can help? It should be easy for you to calculate how things will end up if they continue changing at the current rate. I want you to prepare for that. Preparing for the worst case is your specialty. I want you to prepare for that. Understood. The Japanese are the people who sold off the 5-story pagoda of the Kufudo Temple, which had over 1,000 years of history for just 250 yen. What? This is during the Meiji era, so the 250 yen wasn't exactly the same value as modern currency. Even so, it can hardly be called a fitting price for a building with history over a millennium long. 250 yen. This is a historical tower, which later on was named as a national treasure. It became part of the cultural asset of the old capital of Nara in 1998. It was even added to the World Heritage List. And that was the price they sold it for. I've learned about the tragedy of... Wow, okay. The expulsion of Buddhism from Japan. That was triggered by the... whatever. The separation of Shinto and Buddhism. Look, weebs, can we have an English name for that? Yes, it was indeed a tragedy. What a tragedy, to discover that we Japanese are people who can use a 1,000-year-old cultural treasure for firewood without any respect. The Japanese are people so foolish that not only are they willing to protect their tradition and culture, unwilling to, but they can't even manage to get a good price for it. A people who can't understand the worth of its own culture until Ernest Fenollosa suggested to Ito Hirobumi, the first prime minister. Do you know who Ernest Fenollosa was? He was an American. Hell yeah, brother. And he was a paid foreign professor. On top of that, his specialties were philosophy and political economy. In other words, our country's first prime minister was lectured on the value of the Japanese culture by an American working outside his field. How far do you think the Japanese would be able to go to protect mere soy sauce, the culture of everyday meal? That shit not important at all. Julie couldn't answer. Look, you ain't fucking protecting some fucking tower. You ain't protecting no fucking soy sauce, okay? Slap some fucking ketchup on it. It's all good. After all, soy sauce culture had been completely wiped out in the 21st century Japan. Because we didn't protect our culture, it was destroyed. Because we liked fakes we could get for cheap more than our culture, it was destroyed. But this isn't like some animal that went extinct billions of years ago. Just a few decades ago, we still aside as a culture spanning 1,000 years was destroyed, and let it die. As a matter of historical knowledge, Julie knew this, of course. She knew that soy sauce had a history far more than 1,000 years long. Though to be fair, just because something has history doesn't mean it's worth fucking protecting, okay? Some shit in the past needs to stay in the past. Culture does evolve and change. Clinging on to, like, one thing through all time is really fucking dumb. Even when faced with President Satomi's practical declaration of defeat, Madame Rose didn't give up. She didn't give up using soy sauce culture to bring unity and prosperity to the community of her countrymen by bringing it within everyone's reach. And she continued to make her case to everyone. Madame Rose stood in the street and appealed to the city folk. Soy sauce was a bit of a precious culture that the Japanese had to protect. If they let that be destroyed, they would end up losing other parts of their culture too. Fuck them. Like, if they don't want to, then you shouldn't, like, force them. Who cares? However, no one listened to her words. On the contrary, some people called out insults to her, saying she was trying to gouge people with soy sauce. Fuck off. Real soy sauce, which no one took. And off to the side, the fake soy sauce that sold like crazy. I mean, all you have to do is have, like, blind taste tests. And be like, hey, you guys are selling out for fucking garbage. Even though everyone should know that it didn't taste right. However, no one felt like paying 3 times the money for something as intangible as taste. How is that intangible? It literally is tangible. Even though people could buy it for just $22 more, no one did. Fuck them. They might buy it once as a souvenir, but they wouldn't buy it again. Fuck them. Who cares? Don't do anything for them. Slash their wages and be like, hey, since you want to save money so much, I'll save money too. That's a little fucked, but just saying. On the contrary, the city folk sneered, saying that they'd probably start selling it for cheap once it passed the best of use date. Fuck off. If only one of them had a little range of vision or ability to see the future that Rose had. Or if they just weren't stupid. But of course, none of them had that vision. That was why Rose alone could be Madame Rose, the one who guided her countrymen. You're guiding a bunch of fucking lemmings that want to run off a cliff. Her cries didn't reach any of her countrymen. The cries of her heart were not understood. You're trying to guide lemmings, and they don't do anything. Because you're normal. Here, be my guest. Sorry to bother you during work. Oh. Oh, Meryl, long time no see. Hey, it's Lee. You surprised me. I didn't realize you were here. He's here incognito today. Please keep it a secret from everyone. If I went to a Japanese club to play, many of my countrymen would be envious. How bothersome. You liar, don't you mean a lot of girls would be jealous? Putting that aside. Sorry, Rose, you see... Meryl whispered into Rose's ear. Rose nodded immediately without a trace of suspicion on her face. It's okay. I'll call them here. When Rose nodded, Oliver and the others waiting in the hall were given permission to enter the room. They had been. No. Oliver in particular had been unsatisfied ever since that day. In the first place, none of them had even seen Zell try to poison Rose. Zell had been pouring water when Madame Rose approached her, and after they exchanged some words, Zell suddenly turned white and dashed away. After that, they had only heard a one-sided report from Wayne, who said she was a killer hired by the enemy. I don't believe it. I'm not like you heartless people. I'm too dumb to really understand. I don't want to think about how that smile of hers was there to deceive us. She really lost her memory at first. At least that much is true. If only her memory hadn't come back, Plus bad luck. If that's true, then while her memory was gone, we were talking to the real Zell. What did you think after being with the real Zell? Did she look like someone who'd kill to eat? No, she didn't. Zell isn't that kind of person. What do you mean? A hired killer from Chinatown? I don't believe it. She was obviously overwhelmed by some unavoidable circumstance and doing it unwillingly. Obviously. You're a kind person, Oliver. You've believed Zell in all this time. I don't suspect my comrades. I'm sorry, but if it's a choice between Madame Rose and one of my comrades, I'll stick by Zell. So yeah, they say they want to hear what you have to say no matter what. Wayne's still in shock, you know. If they tried to ask him, he wouldn't be happy. Unable to ask Wayne while he was in a bad mood, they had discussed the matter with Meryl through Nina. They said they wanted to hear what happened that day from Rose. It's sad, but it's true that she was an assassin. However, Lee will tell you why she had to become an assassin. Ni hao, children. I am Lee Meiju. A pleasure to meet you. Lee? At least call him son, dumbass. No. What's a leading member of the GDS doing here? The three of them were shocked and learned that the Chinese man sitting across from Rose was Lee. Apparently, though, they knew the name of Small Rock Chinatown's boss. This was the first time they'd seen his face. However, they knew the many fearsome stories of his kills, and they seemed to have tensed up. You're Hotorubi's friends? I don't know any Hotorubi. We're the real Zell's comrades. For a period of time, Zell really did lose her memory. During that time, we were true comrades. She really did lose her memory? I see. That would explain things. Zell had been given the privilege of spending a day with her father one day a month. Zell had abandoned that privilege just once, during the first month after infiltrating Primavera. It had been puzzling since her father was her only support, but now it finally made sense. The plot of her losing her memory and going into Primavera's care had come true, without any deception. Poor child. I knew it would have been better had her memory never returned at all. Yeah, I agree. Zell really is a girl with a sad history. Even I'm just hearing about it now from Lee. She didn't become an assassin by choice. It was just forced on her against her will. Lee, could you repeat what you just said to these kids too? How much do you know about her? Nothing. We saw she had a creepy tattoo on her neck. Zell would never have chosen to get that. We really don't know anything more. She was born on the Chinese mainland, while it was occupied by the Japanese. She was raised in a large city in the countryside where Chinese and Japanese people lived together. So the natural way she spoke Chinese really wasn't something she'd learned later. A land where the Chinese language was an everyday thing. That was the place she was born. Hey, I said that she was born in China or whatever. Zell, or Saijo Hotaru, was born in a provincial city in China under Japanese control, and raised in a wealthy household. Her father was a well-known figure locally, promulgated the idea of the Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere. Oh, Jesus Christ. And supposedly wanted her to be the bridge between Japan and China. Okay, dude, calm down. For that reason, he gave her an education that would allow her to adapt to Chinese culture, including having Chinese teachers and mingling with Chinese households. However, when that great disaster hit the entire Japanese island chain, the war suddenly ended. On that day, the utopia of the fucking co-prosperity sphere, where Chinese and Japanese lived together in harmony, was destroyed. Yeah, it would have been so much better if they were just conquered. Of course, the only ones who believed it was a utopia were the Japanese. From the Chinese point of view, they were the ones being ruled, so they were biding their time until the uprising came. Hello? In some cities, the Chinese folk all revolted at once and began to attack the Japanese nationals. The long war and rule had been a continuous attack on their self-respect. All those feelings had built up and exploded in a burst of righteous anger. Astonishingly, some of the Japanese were shocked by this anger. We put infrastructure in place while we ruled them, so obviously they should be thanking us. Some of them truly believe that. The Chinese government, which was still in an unstable position, was unable to stop these riots, to say nothing of the Japanese government. For Japanese people living in the interior, like Zell, escaping quickly became an urgent matter. However, right before they did, Zell's family was suddenly arrested by a group of Chinese MPs, and she was sold into sex slave. Her father was the head of the police station, was under suspicion. Suspicion? He was suspected of committing atrocities against the Chinese citizens. His name was on a list of war criminals constructed by the local government. They claimed he was arrested before he could escape. Chief of Police Saijo Yukishi was suspected of repeatedly arresting Chinese people for crimes they hadn't committed, then killing them en masse in a gas chamber inside the station. What the fuck? From what Zell had heard from her father, that was apparently an accident. How the fuck do you have that be an accident? They'd been hit with a massive cold wave that winter season. The detention area in the police station was heated to a degree by a stove. However, two misfortunes occurred at the same time. First, the stove had broken. Negligence on part of those in charge of it was probably partly to blame. The stove broke late at night, and until dawn it had pumped carbon monoxide into all the cells through the ducts. The second bit of misfortune was that several people held that there were young ringleaders of a massive riot that had broken out the previous day. Of course, even if the Japanese announced that they had died due to an unfortunate accident, none of the Chinese would believe them. While the young heroes of the anti-Japanese resistance were being held here, it was possible that another riot could break out demanding their release. The Chinese believed that, fearful of such an outcome, the Japanese had quickly gassed those heroes to death and made it look like an accident. At the time, the government wanted those anti-Japanese heroes as a way to boost public support. And if possible, it would be more convenient if those heroes were already died. After all, if they were alive, they would threaten the position of those in government. Lee laughed. Following the orders of the central government, all the regional governments made lists of heroes. In regions under contention, it should have been easy to fill those lists up. However, in this city, the city Zell lived in, which was far from the battlefield, it hadn't been easy to find people to recommend. And this incident is what they set their eyes on. The young dead were quickly lauded as anti-Japanese heroes. Saijo was named as the villain who killed them with poison gas. But it was an accident, wasn't it? Doesn't matter. Charles, there is no truth when it comes to events related to war. To the Japanese, it's a stove incident. To the Chinese, it's a brutal crime where people were killed with gas. Both those are true to their respective sides, no matter how much each side makes its own claims. It won't be possible to reach that truth, a truth that both can accept. The People's Courts decided the police chief Saijo's guilt and been completely proven and sentenced him to death. The court acknowledged the existence of the gas rooms and concluded that Saijo had decided, by his own judgment, to unjustly execute those citizens. This gas room is currently on display in an anti-Japanese museum. However, some young Japanese on the internet claim that this museum was a fabricated gas chamber made after the war for anti-Japanese propaganda. They used blueprints of the police station at the time as evidence that the existence of the gas chamber had been forged, but the museum denied it. The remodeling had been done for the convenience of visitors, and the existence of the gas chamber wasn't in doubt, as proved by countless testimonies. Even now in the 21st century, this crime has not been allowed to rest in peace. That Mr. Saijo was given the death sentence is a fact. Beyond that, there is no truth. Was Mr. Saijo an atrocious man like the trial accused him of being? Or was it really just an accident? Were the anti-Japanese heroes really arrested for being part of an anti-Japanese movement, or because they broke into stores to rob them during the turmoil of the riot? No one knows. That's just one thing we can say. Pitch soils. Evil rumors are hard to erase. That is the sort of situation in which her family was abandoned. Well, usually most stories like that are coming out at the time. Usually at least they're truth on some sides. Some just a lie completely. However, Mr. Saijo wasn't executed. Immediately before it happened, he and Zell, the only surviving members of his family, disappeared from jail. There are many theories as how he broke out of jail. However, one pervasive theory is that a loyal government big shot he knew well broke him out, in exchange for the wealth that Mr. Saijo secretly held. So Zell and her father barely managed to escape. However, the two of them didn't return to Japan safely. The two Saijos were now in debt to the local underworld. They offered their secret wealth in exchange for a ticket to Japan. However, that apparently didn't go as well as they planned. With a wallet, you can just open it up and show what's inside. However, it's impossible to get an idea of how much secret wealth someone owns. The people who take in and the two Saijos estimate that Mr. Saijo was hiding more assets than he offered. Eventually, the trust between them broke down. The two Saijos were confined to something like an underground hideout. If it came out that they were hiding a war criminal, it would be troublesome. Of course, no one would let an escaped war criminal run wild. For the sake of pride and saving face, the central government began a rigorous search and pursuit. If it came out that they were hiding this criminal, they would be branded as pro-Japanese and accused of the same crime. As time went on, hiding the Saijos began to become a burden. At the time, Mr. Saijo was little more than a baggage to them. During that time, they began to forget the possibility non-existent an asset in favor of the asset they had before them. If Hotaru-san hadn't been so beautiful, they would have never left China alive. What does that mean? Sex slavery! Figure it out already. Use that damn tattoo and figure it out. In exchange for her father's safety, she obeyed everything, no matter how harsh. As a beautiful, obedient pet, she probably offered bosses a feeling of supremacy they couldn't buy with money. But they literally did. Then, when she began to prove valuable as a gift, she was passed between several despicable men. However, eventually, some people started to take advantage of the fact by using her as an assassin. In exchange for her father's safety, the last thing in supporting her heart, she continued to fall deeper into darkness. In other words, Zell was. She was forced into becoming a killer in exchange for her father's safety. It is a sad tale, a tragedy of the war. Why didn't she tell us? If she did tell us, then would we have believed her? We couldn't have. Even if she told us, we wouldn't have believed her. Zell. In that case, where's Zell's father now? Somewhere in the City 22 GDS hideout. She probably intends to save her by herself, but that would be reckless beyond all reason. At this rate, she'll die like a dog. As soon as Lee had said that, Oliver turned around as though hit with an electric shock. Charles and Nina followed him without a moment's hesitation. They probably intended to search for Zell and stop her. Stop her? And then what? Who knows? That's something for the young to consider. They dashed outside in the heat of the moment, but they had no idea where Zell was. Somewhere into City 22. However, they wanted to see her as soon as possible. To see her and talk with her. No, apologize to her. She's probably wandering around Chinatown looking for her father. Oh, wait. The Chinatown City 23 or the one in City 22? If we all get fired up and just run all over the place, we'll never find her. City 22, obviously. That's where her dad is. But if we stay here, we'll never find her, right? We're scum, and we don't trust our we didn't trust our comrade. We didn't even try to trust Zell. I feel the same. I don't want to see the sun rise tomorrow before I've apologized to Zell. I don't care if my heart explodes. I'll run around looking for Zell, even if it kills me. Sheesh, guys, wait. Wait up, you guys. Estella? Oh, to be young. You're so excited you can't hear the people around you. Lee told me to give this to you. Estelle was holding what appeared to be a folded memo. Oliver took it and spread it out. Chinese? We can't read this. I can. I'll read it for you. Now there's a high-class girl for you. You're awesome. It's an address. I guess he wants you to go there. It was located. It was a location within City 23's Chinatown. Guide them to that place, Lee. And that's what it says. That place. Let's go. We might find a clue about Zell. Stella, thank you so much. I don't know what's going on, but if Lee is looking around after you, that should be reassuring. The three thanked her and ran off. As long as they could meet Zell, nothing else mattered. At that moment, they couldn't think of anything else. Oh, okay. Cool.